I've always had great doubts about myself, about my looks, about my talent or so-called talent. And so I've never believed much of it. I believed the results, and I'm very happy with them.
Audrey Hepburn is remembered by the world as a symbol of grace, beauty, and elegance. When people think of her, they imagine the little black dress in Breakfast at Tiffany's, her soft smile, and her gentle voice. She seemed perfect, almost like a princess who stepped out of a fairy tale. But behind that graceful image was a woman who carried deep pain, secret struggles, and memories of war that never truly left her. In 1978, an interview surfaced in which Audrey spoke more openly than ever before about her doubts, her childhood, and the difficult truths of her past. In that conversation, she admitted something that surprised many people. She said she never truly believed in her own beauty or talent. She always doubted herself. For someone the world saw as flawless, this confession changed how many people viewed her. It showed that behind the glamorous Hollywood star was a woman shaped by fear, hunger, loss, and abandonment. To understand why Audrey Hepburn walked away from fame at the height of her career and chose a quieter life, we must first understand where she came from and what she survived as a child. Audrey was born on May 4, 1929, in Brussels, Belgium. Her full name was Audrey Kathleen Ruston. Her father was a banker with British and Austrian roots, and her mother came from a Dutch noble family. On the surface, her background seemed privileged and secure. But the political beliefs of her parents added a dark shadow to her early life. In the 1930s, both of her parents showed support for Nazi ideas. Her mother even attended events where Adolf Hitler spoke and wrote articles that praised him. At that time, many people in Europe did not fully understand the horror that would later come from those beliefs. Still, knowing that her family had once supported such ideas became something that troubled Audrey deeply later in life. When she grew older and learned the full truth about the war and its crimes, she felt ashamed and confused about her family's past. This inner conflict stayed with her for years and added to the feeling that her life was not as simple or as pure as the world believed. Audrey's childhood was not stable or peaceful. Her family moved often between Belgium, England, and the Netherlands. This constant moving made her feel unsettled and unsure of where she truly belonged. When she was only 6 years old, her parents divorced. Her father suddenly left the family without giving a clear explanation. Audrey's mother told her that he had gone on a trip and would not be coming back. For a young child, this was heartbreaking and confusing. Audrey later described this as the most painful moment of her life. She felt abandoned, and that feeling stayed with her into adulthood. She wrote letters to her father every day, hoping he would return, but the letters were never sent because no one knew where he was. Hearing her mother cry at night made the pain even deeper. Soon after the divorce, Audrey was sent to boarding school in England. While there, she discovered ballet and fell deeply in love with dance. Ballet became her dream and her escape. It gave her something beautiful to focus on during a time filled with emotional confusion. But just as she began to feel some stability, the world changed again. In 1939, as World War II began, her mother decided to move back to the Netherlands, believing it would be safer there. Sadly, this decision placed young Audrey directly in the path of Nazi occupation. The war would soon take away her childhood completely and replace it with hunger, fear, and courage beyond her years. When the Nazis invaded the Netherlands in May 1940, Audrey Hepburn was only 11 years old. Almost overnight, her life changed from one of comfort to one of fear and uncertainty. Soldiers filled the streets, rules became strict, and people lived in constant worry about what might happen next. Audrey's family, who once had money and status, suddenly found themselves struggling just to survive. One of the most painful moments during the war came in 1942 when Audrey's uncle was executed by the Nazis as punishment for resistance activities. This event shocked her deeply. It forced her to understand that the danger around her was real and deadly. The war was no longer something distant. It had entered her family. As the occupation continued, life became more difficult. Food grew scarce, and fear became part of everyday life. Audrey and her family moved to the town of Velp, hoping for safety, but safety was an illusion. By the winter of 1944, known as the Hunger Winter, conditions became unbearable. Food shipments stopped completely, and freezing temperatures made survival even harder. People in the Netherlands were surviving on as little as 400 calories a day. Families lined up for hours hoping to receive small amounts of bread or potatoes, but often there was nothing left. Audrey's family, once well off, now had to search for anything they could eat. They boiled tulip bulbs, which were hard to digest and offered almost no nutrition. When those ran out, they searched for grass and weeds. Audrey, who dreamed of becoming a ballerina, became weak and thin from malnutrition. She developed anemia and suffered from swelling caused by hunger. The lack of food and warmth damaged her health in ways that followed her for the rest of her life. Yet even during this terrible time, something extraordinary happened. Instead of giving in to fear, Audrey found courage within herself. Only 15 years old, Audrey began helping the Dutch resistance. It was dangerous work that could have cost her life if she had been caught. She performed secret ballet recitals in private homes to raise money for resistance efforts. These performances were silent gatherings where the audience did not clap because even applause could attract attention. The young girl who once danced for beauty now danced to fight oppression. She also delivered secret messages and underground newspapers, hiding them in her socks while riding her bicycle through the countryside. Every trip carried the risk of arrest. On one occasion, she encountered Nazi soldiers while carrying important information. Thinking quickly, she pretended to pick flowers and smiled as if she were an innocent girl enjoying nature. The soldiers let her pass, unaware of the danger she carried. These experiences shaped her deeply. The world later saw her as fragile and delicate, but the truth was very different. She had already faced death, hunger, and terror before she ever stepped onto a movie set. The war left physical scars, but it also left emotional ones. She understood suffering in a way few Hollywood stars ever could. Years later, when she worked with starving children as a UNICEF ambassador, she did not see strangers. She saw reflections of herself as a hungry child during the war. This connection between her painful past and her humanitarian future would become one of the most powerful parts of her life story. After the war ended in 1945, Audrey Hepburn was only 16 years old, but she felt much older. The years of hunger and fear had taken away her childhood. Like many young people in Europe, she had to rebuild her life from almost nothing. Her dream was still to become a professional ballerina. She moved to Amsterdam and later to London to train seriously in ballet. For a while, it seemed possible that dance could be her future. She trained with famous teachers and worked very hard, pushing her weak body beyond its limits. But the damage caused by years of malnutrition had affected her growth and strength. She was too tall and too frail to become a top classical ballerina. Her teachers gently told her that while she had talent, her body would not allow her to reach the highest level. This was another painful disappointment. Ballet had been her escape during the war, and now even that dream seemed out of reach. Instead of giving up, Audrey decided to look for other opportunities in the world of performance. She began modeling to earn money and took small roles in British films. At first, these were minor appearances, often without many lines. She was still learning, still unsure of herself, and still carrying deep doubts about her abilities. She often said in later interviews that she never believed she was truly talented. She thought she was simply lucky to die in 1951. Everything changed unexpectedly while she was working on a small film called Monte Carlo Baby in France. During production, the famous French writer Colette visited the set. Colette was searching for someone to play the main role in her Broadway play Gigi. The moment she saw Audrey, she reportedly said, "There is my Gigi." Audrey was surprised and nervous. She had never performed on Broadway before, and she doubted whether she was capable of carrying such an important role. But Colette believed in her strongly and convinced her to accept the offer. Audrey traveled to New York, where she worked tirelessly to prepare for the stage. She practiced her lines constantly and worked on projecting her voice so the audience in the large theater could hear her clearly. Opening night was a success. Critics praised her natural charm and gentle presence. The play ran for over 200 performances, and suddenly Audrey's name appeared in bright lights above a Broadway theater. For someone who had once starved during the war and doubted her own worth, this was almost unbelievable. Yet even as her career began to rise, she remained modest and uncertain. In interviews, she often downplayed her success. She believed that other actresses were more beautiful and more talented. These inner doubts would follow her throughout her entire career, even when she became one of the most famous women in the world. The lost interview years later would reveal that despite her public image of confidence and grace, she still saw herself as the insecure girl shaped by war and abandonment. Audrey Hepburn's true breakthrough came in 1953 with the film Roman Holiday, a movie that would change her life forever. At the time, she was still relatively unknown in Hollywood. The role of Princess Anne was originally considered for more established stars, including Elizabeth Taylor. But when director William Wyler saw Audrey's screen test, everything shifted. What impressed him was not only her beauty, but her natural honesty. Even after the official test ended, the cameras continued rolling as Audrey spoke casually about her life during the war. Her quiet strength, vulnerability, and sincerity were impossible to ignore. Wyler reportedly knew immediately that she was the right choice. The studio executives were nervous. Casting an unknown actress in such an expensive film seemed risky. But Wyler believed she had something rare that could not be manufactured. When Roman Holiday was released, audiences fell in love with her. She brought a freshness and innocence to the screen that felt different from the glamorous and dramatic style of many actresses of that era. Her performance felt real. She was playful, gentle, and deeply human. The film became a major success, and Audrey Hepburn became an international star almost overnight. In 1954, at only 24 years old, Audrey won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in Roman Holiday. It was a remarkable achievement for someone so new to Hollywood. But even at that moment of triumph, she remained humble and slightly overwhelmed. She later admitted that she felt almost like an outsider at such grand ceremonies. Fame had arrived quickly, but she never fully felt comfortable with it. Her next film, Sabrina, released in the same year, confirmed her status as a leading actress. In that movie, she played a young woman caught between two wealthy brothers. The film also marked the beginning of her lifelong collaboration with French designer Hubert de Givenchy. Audrey insisted on wearing his designs, which shaped her elegant image for decades. The simple lines, clean silhouettes, and understated beauty of Givenchy's clothing matched her personality perfectly. Together, they created some of the most iconic looks in film history. Yet behind the growing fame and glamorous appearances, Audrey continued to struggle with insecurity. She often worried that she was not as talented as her peers. She feared that one day audiences would discover she was not truly special. This fear of being found out never completely left her. While the world saw a rising star glowing with confidence, Audrey privately battled the same doubts she had carried since childhood. The contrast between the public image and the private reality became one of the most fascinating aspects of her life story. By the early 1960s, Audrey Hepburn had become one of the most recognizable and admired actresses in the world. Films like Breakfast at Tiffany's in 1961 strengthened her image as a symbol of elegance and charm. The famous black dress, long gloves, and pearl necklace she wore in the opening scene became one of the most iconic looks in cinema history. To the public, she seemed to represent sophistication and confidence. However, behind the scenes, Audrey was still the same woman who doubted herself deeply. She often worried that her success might disappear as quickly as it had arrived. She did not see herself as glamorous in the way other actresses did. Instead, she saw a thin girl who had survived war and loss. In 1964, she faced one of the biggest controversies of her career when she was cast in the film version of My Fair Lady. The role of Eliza Doolittle had already been made famous on Broadway by Julie Andrews, who had performed it thousands of times. Many fans believed Julie Andrews deserved the film role as well. When the studio chose Audrey instead, there was immediate public criticism. Some accused the studio of choosing fame over talent. Audrey felt the pressure intensely. She worked very hard to prepare, especially on the musical parts of the role, taking singing lessons for months. What hurt her most was discovering that her singing voice would be replaced by another singer's voice without her full knowledge. She had practiced tirelessly, believing her own voice would be heard in the final film. Learning that it had been dubbed made her feel embarrassed and betrayed. When award season arrived, the film received many nominations and won several major awards, but Audrey herself was not nominated for Best Actress. For someone who had once won an Oscar early in her career, this omission felt painful. It seemed to confirm her private fears that perhaps she was not truly talented enough. Meanwhile, Julie Andrews won the Academy Award for Mary Poppins, a role she accepted after not being cast in My Fair Lady. The situation created a sense of public comparison that followed Audrey for years. Although she handled the controversy with grace, the experience affected her confidence. It was one of several moments that slowly pushed her away from Hollywood's intense spotlight. Audrey began to question whether fame truly brought happiness. The world saw success and beauty, but she felt pressure, judgment, and constant expectation. The glamorous life that seemed perfect from the outside often felt exhausting on the inside. These growing doubts, combined with personal struggles in her relationships and her longing to become a mother, began shaping the decision that would later surprise the world, stepping away from the very fame others would have done anything to keep. While Audrey Hepburn's career was reaching incredible heights, her personal life was far more complicated and often filled with heartbreak. In 1954, while working on the film Sabrina, she fell in love with her co-star William Holden. Their chemistry on screen was strong, and off-screen their connection quickly became romantic. Holden was older, married, and already a father, but Audrey was deeply drawn to him. For a time, their relationship felt intense and meaningful. Holden reportedly told her he was willing to leave his wife to build a life with her. However, the relationship faced a painful reality when Audrey discovered that Holden had undergone a vasectomy and could not have children. Becoming a mother was one of Audrey's deepest dreams. After losing her father as a child and growing up during war, she longed to create a stable and loving family of her own. The realization that she could not have children with Holden broke her heart. Despite their strong feelings, she chose to end the relationship. Years later, Holden would describe Audrey as the love of his life, but for Audrey, the decision reflected her strong desire for motherhood above all else. In the same year, Audrey married actor and director Mel Ferrer. At first, their relationship appeared passionate and supportive. They shared artistic interests and worked on several films together. But their marriage faced challenges from the beginning. Mel was older and had already been divorced twice. Some people in Hollywood believed he had too much influence over Audrey's career decisions. There were rumors of jealousy and control, though Audrey often defended him publicly. Throughout their marriage, Audrey experienced several miscarriages, each one causing deep emotional pain. The most devastating loss came in 1965 when she had a stillbirth during the 7th month of pregnancy. These losses left her feeling fragile and exhausted. She temporarily stepped away from work to recover both physically and emotionally. In 1960, she finally gave birth to her first son, Sean. Holding her baby in her arms brought her immense joy and a sense of fulfillment she had long hoped for. Becoming a mother changed her priorities completely. Although she continued acting for a few more years, her focus gradually shifted toward family life. Her marriage to Mel eventually ended in divorce in 1968 after years of strain and rumors of infidelity on both sides. Despite the difficulties, Audrey later said that Mel had helped her grow as an actress. Still, the emotional toll of her personal struggles made her increasingly question whether the Hollywood lifestyle was worth the cost. The glamorous image seen by millions did not show the tears, the losses, and the quiet loneliness she often felt behind closed doors. These experiences would eventually lead her to make a decision that shocked fans around the world, choosing family and peace over fame and applause.